Unknown caller.
Professor, I think there is some technical problem is facing by the organizers. Can we please wait for a moment?
Okay. Can you see me? You can see my face,
Yes,
but can you see my PowerPoints?
yes, both you are visible.
Oh, so I can start my presentation.
Yes, you can,
But
Professor.
but can people hear so people can hear me?
Yes,
Oh, good. Okay. So I can get rid of this window and go back one. Okay. So this is model thinking for a better world and model thinking for everyday life. And this is based on my book, which I'm holding up right now. Model thinking for everyday life, how to make smarter decisions. Okay, and thank you very much. I'm honored that you invited me to give this presentation. I think we're 1 hour off, uh, and you think we're still on daylight savings time, but it's really 10 o'clock here, and my calendar said that this talk started at 11 o'clock, so that's why we're starting a little bit late. I apologize for that. Okay, so Model Thinking for Everyday Life is the book. It's published by Informs, the Institute for Operations Research and Management Science. My profession is I'm an operations research professional. I call operations research the most important invisible profession on planet Earth. It's basically the physics of our everyday life and modeling the physics, whether it's a car stopped at a traffic light or you're in a waiting line at a store trying to check out these sorts of things. But getting from A to B in the most efficient, time effective manner, all these things are part of operations research. So people like Professor Steven Pinker, who's very famous at Harvard University, says the book is filled with surprising insights about the hazards and pleasures of everyday life, revelations that seem perfectly intuitive after Larson has explained them. Mark Daskin from University of Michigan says he thinks this book should be required reading for all undergraduates in operations research and industrial engineering. Michael Horn, all these people are famous and authors of other well-read books. Learning requires efforts, but rare is a book that weaves active learning into its text. Larson's new book does this just to help us become someone who learns new things each and every day. Sanjay Sarma, reason and abstraction are becoming important in society today and also in curricula. Larson's book is a really fresh and innovative journey that awakens that faculty both playfully and effectively. The playfully part is basically when you have the book, and there is an online version of it as well. It costs some money to acquire that. Uh, I request that you put your computer away and you get lots of sharpened pencils and pieces of paper, and you attack these problems, you frame the problems, and play with them the old-fashioned way, pencil and paper. So basically, there are a couple of few things that are surprising. In many logistical systems, you can speed service by deliberately inserting delays. Speed service by delivering delays. Or did you know that when you're trying to cite the locations for windmills, for wind turbines, the wind pushes the turbine around and generates electricity. The location with the highest average wind speed is not necessarily the one that provides the most electrical energy. The trick about that one is the electricity you get from a wind turbine is proportional to it goes as the cube of the wind speed. So basically, if you have a location that has a lower average, but the distribution of wind speed puts a higher fraction that are very, very high wind speed, you get more electricity from that location. Or you might have two baseball players, Tom and Dick. Tom has the higher batting average in each of two successive seasons. But when the two seasons are combined to do a macro season, Dick has the higher batting average. Yes, that's possible. And if we have time, we can discuss that. This is very interesting. You have two wards in a hospital. So simply moving chronically ill patients from Ward A to Ward B, if you select them in the right way, can increase the life expectancy of both groups, even though no medical intervention was made. This sounds very counterintuitive. So you can just move patients from one ward to another if you select them in an appropriate way. Uh, the end result is the life expectancy of both groups increase, and yet no medical intervention occurred. And in most service systems, which customers wait for service, the duration of the wait is not the most important part of customer satisfaction. Other things are important for customer satisfaction, other than just the duration of the wait. So one of my lessons, a model thinking. The word model as an adjective has two meanings. Model meaning exemplary thinking, thinking to be emulated, and model thinking meaning conceptual model and sometimes even mathematical model. So model has two or three separate meanings. So we try to shift the focus away from just doing a Google search to find the answer to a problem. And maybe the answer is the square root of two, but that really doesn't help your learning process. You want to find out what the process was that gave rise to the correct answer, square root of two. So we say the answer is not the answer, the process is the answer. And so we have an instructive allegory here. There's a monastery. Let's suppose this is a monastery in southern Italy where the sun is out most days. And every day some visitors come by at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they look at this sphere that's standing there on a pedestal in the garden, and they touch it, and they notice the sphere is warmer on the bottom and cool on the top, and yet the sun is shining. You think the sun would warm the top first, and the bottom would be cooler. And they come by at 3 o'clock every day for many days, and the sun is out all those days, and they find the same thing. The sphere is warmer on the bottom than it is on the top. So then they stop for a while, and one of the visitors said, "I'm going to develop a theory." So he spends several days, and he develops a mathematical theory about why the sun would warm the bottom rather than the top. And they got so excited that they showed up at 1 o'clock the next day. And at 1 o'clock, they noticed one of the monks out there rotating 180 degrees of the sphere, changing the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top. And that was the answer to the problem. And the theory they developed was all wrong. I'm sorry if there's some noise in the background here. I hear there's a big machine next door putting asphalt down on a driveway. So I hope that doesn't interrupt my conversation. So B.B. King says, a famous blues artist, said, "Any day I don't learn something is a wasted day." Also, Albert Einstein said something like that. A day without learning is a day wasted. There's so much to learn and so little time to learn. So there's the sharpened pencils, a lot of them. There's the blank sheets of paper, a lot of them. And the book urges you to get equipped and attack problems the old-fashioned way, not on the computer, not typing things in, but with a pencil and paper. So we say that the way to become a Class A model thinker is active learning with pencil and paper. And the book doesn't have any heavy math, but it has a lot of problem framing and formulation and playing around with the problem. And when I wrote the book in 2019 and 2020, I made the assertion that more learning occurs this way with pencil and paper than with the computer. But I had no scientific reference. I just made that assertion. Since then, learning theorists have done experiments and they've validated my assertion. Learning theory people have done experiments with actual people learning, and they found out that people using pencil and paper uh, process things into their brain and stored them in a way that they understood them uh, quite more deeply than if they just typed it into a computer. So I suggest when people have this book, either the physical book like this or online, you don't type in answers into the computer. In fact, I prefer you have the book and you hide the computer in a different room. So here we have one example of the kind of learning that occurs in the book. It's a rainy day. It's a rainy day. You can see the rain hitting the windshield of this car. And you can see the car has a sloping windshield right there. And there's a mother with her daughter, and the mother's driving. And the daughter says, "Mom, how come it always rains faster when you drive faster?" And the mom says, "Why do you say that?" "Because when you drive faster, there's more rain hitting the windshield, and you have to make the windshield wipers go faster. And when you slow down, the rain doesn't hit isn't so hard, and you can slow down the windshield wipers." So that's the question she asked, and so you can take a pause and take a pencil to paper like this, pencil to paper. There's a sharpened pencil. Think about it. Pencil to paper. So in the book, mom has a conversation with her daughter as they think through the question of raindrops on the windshield. And even if mom knows the answer, she's not just going to quote the answer. Parenting requires careful thought. It's how do you interact with your children and address issues of questions that when they come up with asking questions about day-to-day life. And this is like a water hitting the windshield. So they have what I call the discovery learning discussion that they figure out why they have to make the windshield wipers go faster when mom drives faster. And so this is called discovery learning. And it's a key teaching method that Ben Franklin of the United States made widely known. And the appendix of this book has a full mathematical treatment of raindrops hitting the car window. And if you think about it, if the car is not moving and there's no wind, the only raindrops that hit it are ones that were straight above the car, and they fall straight down and they hit the sloping part of the windshield. Okay, but if the car is moving, you have those that are straight down hitting the sloping part of the windshield are still there, but there are others you bump into, the ones that are kind of hanging in front that are dropping at 10 feet per second. But if the car is moving, you're going to bump into some of these raindrops that are in front of you, and the faster the car is moving, the more of those you're going to hit. So there are two kinds of raindrops hitting the windshield: those that come straight down and hit the sloping part of the windshield, and those you bump into as the car moves forward. And so the book's appendix goes into that in great detail. So Ben Franklin said, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." And so the book involves you because every 3 or 4 pages, uh, the book has a pencil and paper exercise for the reader. And they say, "Okay, let's stop now. Let's reflect on what you've just read in the last 3 or 4 pages. And here are a few questions for you to think about. And why don't you work on a pencil paper and work out your answers, your approaches to those questions?" So it's a very active learning book. It's not a passive learning book. So the Model T Ford, 1919 or so, whatever that is, how is that a special case? Well, that's a special case because the windshield is totally vertical. So when you're driving along, the only raindrops that hit the windshield are ones that were in front of you that you bump into. If you're not driving and you're just parked for a while and there's no wind, no raindrops hit the windshield because it's totally vertical. And if you look at that Model T, you can see why they call the front window of a car a windshield. It's the original one was to shield the driver from the wind, and there's a perfect visualization of why that works that way. So there's a special case of the windshield when it's typically vertical. Okay, so what else is in the book? Because we're just sampling topics that are in the book. Um, there's a fellow who used to have Garrison Keeler. He used to have a weekly radio show in the U.S. On Saturdays. And at the end of the show, he would say, "That's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average." And everyone got a joke from that. They thought about that. And I'll let you think about it. Is it possible for all the children of Lake Wobegon? Of course, this is a fictional town in the middle part of the United States, maybe in Wisconsin or Minnesota. It's a fictional town, Lake Wobegon, where all the children can be above average. It's possible that all the children of that town are above average when you compare it to all the children in the entire state or the entire region or the entire United States. So it's possible for the children of one place to all be above average when compared to a larger population. How about the average bus inter-arrival time? Is the average bus inter-arrival time a good measure of the service level to an arriving passenger? Now, there's a picture where three buses are clumped in a row. Three buses are clumped in a row. So you say, well, what are the natural dynamics of urban bus systems? Natural dynamics. So and they're not under some kind of optimal control theory. Okay, well, the natural dynamics of buses going along a straight route in a city is to clump together. The physics of clumping. And so basically, suppose the buses are evenly spaced. They're going down this long route. Maybe it's 10 kilometers long. And one of the buses then incurs a stop that there's more than the average number of people to get it on board. Or maybe one or two of the passengers needs assistance from others to get on the bus. So it takes longer. So that bus slows down. So all of a sudden that bus leaves that particular stop maybe 30 seconds or a minute behind schedule. The bus behind it, when it gets to that stop, new passengers have been accumulating for a shorter period of time than had been planned. And so there are fewer passengers to get on the second bus. And so that bus speeds up. And this process keeps on going. So the second bus eventually clumps together with the first bus because the first bus gets progressively behind schedule. The second bus finds progressively fewer passengers when it gets to a stop, and they clump together first in pairs and then higher order as well. So that's basically the bus clumping thing. So you might say, how does a random passenger arriving at curbside experience the average delay for the next bus? And so suppose that the passenger just shows up at a random time. Well, the arriving passenger can be thought of as parachuting. Here's our random passenger parachuting onto the time axis. And just as a thought process, suppose the bus inter-arrival times are 20 minutes and then 2 minutes, 20 minutes and then 2 minutes. So I'm not saying that that's reality in a particular city. I'm using this as a thought process. So if we parachute onto the time axis, we're much more likely to end up in a 20-minute gap than in a 2-minute gap. If we end up in a 20-minute gap, We parachute into a random place in that 20 minutes. So the average waiting time then is a half of 20, which is 10. If we end up in a 2 minute gap, the average waiting time there is half of two, which is one. But we're much more likely to show up. We're 10 times more likely to show up in a 20-minute gap. So if we do all the arithmetic, we find out that the average waiting time for a randomly arriving passenger is 9.18 minutes. Um, because they're much more likely to arrive during that big gap of buses. Okay, so other examples of flaws of averages. Uh, Half of all marriages end in divorce. This is a correct fact in the United States. Maybe it's a sad fact, but half of all marriages end in divorce. But at the same time, only 1 in 8 current marriages will end in divorce. So look at that. Both of these statements are true. Half of all marriages end in divorce. Only 1 in 8 current marriages will end in divorce. And I'll let you reflect on that and think about that. But one of these statements deals with flows, and the other deals with levels. And levels and flows have different intuitions. But both of these statements are true for marriages in the United States. So averages can be, you think about they're simple. You think, well, just the average is you add up 10 numbers, divide by 10, and that's the average. But averages applied to the real world can be much more complicated and non-intuitive. So a final example from the book is motivated from queuing theory, waiting line theory, developed by the Danish telephone engineer A.K. Erlang, who derived the first mathematics of waiting lines and queues in Denmark around 1919, just when telephones were becoming popular, and the more people started getting telephones and using them, uh, there were delays at the time, and there were human operators in the middle that had to physically connect a wire from your phone to the one you're calling, and so queuing theory became very important to understanding that. And so and by the way, queuing is one of my specialties. And if you do a Google search on Dr. Q, my name pops up right away. Okay. And so telephone operators have been popular in US television. This was Lily Tomlin as Ernestine, as a telephone operator uh, in the TV program called Saturday Night Live many years ago. And in the US, the general emergency number is now 911. And when you call 911, you get all these operators answering your calls. Police emergency or emergency, may I help you? And so there are mathematical models originally done by Erlang, and Erlang's equations are still the most popular equations used today to depict the performance of queuing systems. And so New York City's 911 system has an order of magnitude difference between the least busy hour of the day, let's say 3 a.m., excuse me, to 4 a.m., to the busiest hours of the day, which on Friday and Saturday nights are between 8 p.m. and midnight. And so there's the depiction of data that I actually collected from the New York City 911 system that shows the order of magnitude difference. That's the upper black line there shows the number of calls that came in every hour in one particular weekend day in New York City. Now, the department was quite proud of the fact that since they recognized that there was a relatively slow period in between, let's say, 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., they said, okay, why don't the telephone operators take a 2 hour nap there and we'll only have 50% of the regular operators answering the calls. And the rest, other than that, we'll have a flat allocation. So the blue line on the bottom is a flat allocation of operators except between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. And that was their response to an order of magnitude difference. So I came in because uh, I volunteered. I noticed I read letters to the editor of the New York Times, and the letters there were at least two of these. I called the mayor's 911 emergency number the other night, and this is recently, and this is soon after it was implemented for the first time. And I let it ring for 28 minutes, and there was no answer. I thought I had the wrong answer. I hung up. I called again, 911, and I let it ring for 25 minutes. And then the answer was, police emergency, may I help you? And so clearly, if you have a medical or a police or fire emergency, waiting for somebody to answer the phone for 25 minutes is unacceptable, and people will die as a result. So they brought me in, and I worked on it with two lieutenants, Lieutenant Massini and Lieutenant Carvino, and he worked on training of personnel there. They worked on training of personnel. I worked on the queuing mathematics, and I figured out a different way of allocating uh, the operators who were answering the calls and the number of dispatchers that to better match via queuing theory what the order of magnitude difference is between the least busy and the busiest time. And when I presented this to the police commissioner uh, about a month later, he stopped me after about 2 minutes. He said, "What's your name again?" Larson. He said, "What you're telling me is false." He said, "You know, my people tell me that there's no problem with answering of phone calls, 911, and that these letters to the editor of the New York Times are false. They're incorrect. Correct, sergeants, lieutenants?" And he asked Lieutenant Carino and Massini, who I'd been working with straight for a month, and they gulped and they said, "Sir, everything that Mr. Larson is saying is true." And boy, the police commissioner then got up in his, sat up straight in his chair and got very focused and took notes on the rest of my talk. And actually, all the recommendations that I made in that talk were implemented within 7 days fully. It's the fastest implementation I've ever had in my life in New York City. Okay, so that's the New York City case. Um, let's talk a little bit more in another example. You arrive in your car at an intersection, and there's a red light at the intersection, and there are four cars already in queue ahead of you. So you round a bend, and you see that there are four cars stopped at a red light. Are you happy or sad? Are you happy or sad that there are four cars there? Would you prefer that there be zero cars there? Well, it turns out that a traffic light signal intersection is a bulk server queue. Bulk server queue means when one gets served, everyone in queue up to a limit gets served, and the whole waiting line of cars goes through with the green light. So if you see four cars already in queue, that you're happy because you're thinking, the great majority of the cycle time of that red light has already occurred. So it's going to turn green pretty soon, maybe even before I've come to a full stop. And so that's the thing of bulk server queues. Bulk server queues, when you arrive, you're happy if you see others. So, for instance, you arrive in an elevator. If you arrive in an elevator and you see some people waiting there, you're happy because you know the first person that showed up pressed the button to get the elevator to that floor. And maybe that was a minute or two ago. So you're thinking, aha, the fact that there are four people waiting at the elevator already is good news because it means my wait is going to be less as a result. That's what happens with bulk server queues. And then there's the psychology of queues. And in many times, many situations, the psychology of cues are more important than the physics of the cues. And so the Disney properties, from various parts of the world, are what I call the Machiavellian masters of the psychology of cueing. They manage people's expectations. They say, if you join the line and the line is out to here, you can expect to wait 45 minutes before you'll get on the amusement. And if you manage people's expectations, and if you get and you manage their expectations above what you know is true. So if you say, if you join the line here, you can expect to wait 45 minutes, and maybe after 30 minutes you get on the amusement. Um, your son or daughter is with you, say, "Hey, we're 15 minutes ahead of schedule." They're happy. So that's one of the things with psychology of QE. Manage people's expectations and always be able to deliver beyond the things that you told them. And also with the Disney properties, there's many distractions. So keep you away from just focusing on the duration. And this is a current picture where many people who are in a line now, if they have nothing else to do and they're waiting in line, they have their cell phones out and they have their heads bowed looking at their cell phones. And I don't know, I'm probably just an old timer. That makes me very sad because before cell phones, if you had these people lined up in queues, typically you'd have small talk between adjacent queue dwellers. They introduce themselves, talk about the weather of the day, they talk about local sports teams, and pass the time. Maybe they even get a new friend this way. But that doesn't occur anymore because we're what you might call a lonely crowd, all focused on our cell phones. Okay, that's enough for me. Time for discussion. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it. I'm honored that you've invited me to give this talk today. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? I don't hear anything.
Actually, I have a question, Professor.
Okay.
I want to know more about the baseball player example you give. I
Okay, the baseball players. So Tom can have a higher batting average in each of 2 years, but but Dick has the higher batting average when they're combined. I'll just say this. I won't give you the full answer, but there's an invisible variable here. The invisible variable is the number of at bats, the number of times each player got up to out bat. For instance, uh, the first one, Tom, his batting average in year one might be 1,000. In other words, every time he gets up to the plate, he gets a hit, but maybe he only got up to the plate once in the year. He got severely injured, didn't play the rest of the year. So that 1,000, 100% batting every time he gets up to the plate has to be scaled down by the fact that he only went up to bat once. So the invisible variable in that case to understand it is the number of at bats of each player, and you can work it out with pencil and paper to see that those two things are are consistent. Anything else?
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, you're welcome. Did this help you understand a little bit more about model thinking?
Yeah, Professor.
Professor, I do have a question, which is how model thinking can help
our youth more and more to do the productive thinking and stuff like that. Literally, we youth, if I talk about the youth, and we don't know how to think about productivity and something like that. So, can you just elaborate things up, and can you just enlighten us how model thinking can help us in a lot of extent?
In a lot of what? In a lot of applications?
In our way of life that we can increase our productivity. So how model thinking can help
Yeah.
us in that
Well,
way.
what I started thinking this way myself long before I wrote the book. I wrote the book in 2019 and 2021. It was published in 2023, so published 2.5 years ago. Uh, so, what I do each day when I sit down with my cup of coffee, I turn on the computer, I make a model of the day. And I actually email it to myself. I say, okay, first of all, I have to feed my dog. I have a golden retriever dog. She's sleeping right now, 3 times. So I put in the
Professor,
time. I put in the time that I'm going to feed her.
Professor, I have a question.
Hello?
I have a question.
Yeah.
My concept are not clear relation between car, raindrops and car.
I didn't understand what you said. I'm sorry.
My question is, I am not clear concept relation between raindrop and car. Please tell again.
Oh, the raindrops hitting the cars. You want me to describe a little bit more about the raindrops hitting the cars?
Yes, Professor, she's referring this. Can you just please elaborate this?
Yeah. By the way, a full treatment of that is in an appendix of this book, a full mathematical treatment. But basically, the terminal velocity of a raindrop coming down, and let's assume no wind, is 10 feet per second. So every second, a raindrop, once it's left the cloud and it gets to terminal velocity, it's 10 feet per second. And so let's say it falls vertically. Now, if it falls vertically and your car is parked, the only ones that will hit the windshield are the ones that hit the horizontal displacement of the windshield. So if the windshield is like this, there's a horizontal displacement right here, and the raindrops will hit that. So as you start moving, those vertical raindrops hitting the windshield will be unchanged. The number of those raindrops falling straight down and hitting the sloped windshield from that I just described when the car was parked will be unchanged. However, as you start moving, you're going to you're going to have many more raindrops hit the windshield. The extra ones they have hitting the windshield are because you run into them, you bump into them. They're actually in front of the car, and as the car is moving, the windshield bumps into the raindrops they're kind of dangling in front of the car. So that's basically the uh, the physics of it, and the complete mathematical physics are in an appendix in the book. Does that explain it?
Yes, Professor, we got it. We do. I do have another question, which is when you were in our age, what was your strategies to develop your thinking model and stuff like that? Will you please share some stories from that as well when you were our age, and what was your strategies to to increase the productivity and stuff like that?
Well, I guess I was born with an inquiring mind. I love nature. I love to see what's going on around me. I'm looking at my backyard right now, and it's autumn here in the fall in New England, and the leaves are all different colors, and there are leaves on the ground, and so and I like to understand things. So I've always had an inquiring mind. My parents, God bless them, would agree with that. But that inquiring mind got me into studying science, and particularly the science that I liked so much was physics. Physics is, uh, like force equals mass times acceleration, or the gravitational pull of the Earth, these sorts of things. And so I got very much involved with that. And in high school, I had a great physics instructor, and I really fell in love with physics. When I took the SAT exam, which is a standardized test in the United States, I got a perfect score in physics, 800 out of 800. Excuse me, I have to get a glass of water, so I'll be right back.
Sure, Professor.
So, because I got a perfect score in my physics SAT test, I think that's what got me into MIT when I applied to MIT, because only 4% of the applicants to Massachusetts Institute of Technology are admitted. In fact, when I got the letter of admission, and my mother brought it to me in the backyard, I opened it up and I said, "Oh, this must be a mistake. They'll probably there's no way they're going to let me into MIT." And I'm sure they'll send the correcting letter tomorrow. Well, they didn't. It was not a mistake. I was admitted to MIT, and MIT is, I think, the best university in the world for taking science and math and applying it for the good of mankind, and to benefit society. And so I kind of fell in love with MIT, and I'm an MIT lifer. I started at MIT at age 18 as a freshman. And don't ask me how old I am now, but you can guess. But I'm still associated with MIT. I'm still associated with MIT. And I've taught many students, thousands of students over my career, and also master's students and doctoral students. And I love seeing how their lives then progressed after they left. So it's applying science thinking to the real world is something that I love to do. I've never thought about it as a job. I never thought about it as a task. It's just something that I've loved to do my whole life.
Thank you so much, Professor, for enlightening. And if I want to talk about something that this generation, that the way that we are heading up, it's like we are losing our productivity and we are losing the way of thinking. And you guys are the blessing. And when you guys talk in front of us, so we really became so happy because it's like that you guys play the role of light bearer, and it really feels so good because when you guys talk about us, about the youth and stuff like that, about thinking model, about the way that we can approach to our life, so it's really blessing, kind of. So that's the thing. And I do have a small question, which is, if you do have like three advices to give in this generation, what that might be, Professor?
uh, well, this generation, I think, is different by country. Certain countries, the young people are more attentive to learning, and other countries they're not. And even within a country, for instance, the United States is a large country, and there are some states, Massachusetts. I'm very blessed to live in Massachusetts and in Lexington, which is the birthplace of the American Revolution against the British. Uh, the public schools here are excellent. The public schools in Massachusetts are some of the best in the United States, but there are other places that the public schools are not good, or you have to go to private schools to get a good education. And so basically, make sure that the time you're spending on education is a time that you're not just acquiring facts, because the facts will change over time. A fact used to be the planet was flat, the earth was flat. That was a fact. Well, obviously, that fact was wrong. And there are many other facts too. It used to be that the earth was the center of the universe. Well, that fact was wrong too. So forget the facts. The idea of learning is to put yourself in a situation where you're learning by thinking critically, critical thinking skills, always asking questions. And if it's something important that you need the answer to, you ask yourself, well, what other information do I need? Do I need to collect data? Do I need to read what others are saying about that situation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And it's much better to think through things than to do a Google search, and the Google search says, the answer is the square root of two. So that's why I say the answer is not the answer. The thinking process is the answer.
Thank you so much, Professor. It's like that, that if I talk about the youth and stuff like that, as you were saying that you really feel happy that you're living in Massachusetts and something like that. But if I want to talk about Bangladesh, and we literally try so hard to do something productive and something like that, but somehow I don't know, maybe there are some blind spot that we need to fix up or we need to work on, but still we're trying our best to do things up and do good things up as well. And when that it's like we're trying our best to do things up as well. It's like uh, I do have a small question, Professor, which is, as I'm in, that I'm in university level, and the student right now here listening your, voice and your speech, they are also in university level. So in our university level, do we, approach to research-based study, including apart with our academics?
I followed everything except the last sentence. What?
It's like that. Do we need to? It's like we are focusing on our academics, like CGPA. So, do we need to approach with research-based study as well?
Yes, I would say so. Of course, I don't. I'm not that familiar with all the details of your situation, but if you learn how to learn, then the facts and the knowledge you had 5 years ago may no longer be relevant to you, but you learn how to learn so you can always adapt and learn new things. Um, the extending this worldwide is a real challenge, because to get students to think this way rather than memorize facts for a test requires good, innovative teachers. And I recall something, my wife and I, she passed away 2.5 years ago, Liz Murray, were visiting a very poor rural town in the middle of mainland China. And in that town, it was very poor. Nobody was rich. Everyone was just trying to get by. We saw that the teacher was showing videotape lessons of a superlative teacher from Hong Kong or Beijing, because the best schools, I guess, in China were in Hong Kong or Beijing. And so they would take videotapes of some of these best teachers and then show them in this very poor school where the teacher himself or herself didn't know enough to give this kind of lesson. And so the students got exposed to world-class teaching. And what the teacher would do is every 2 or 3 or 4 minutes would stop the video and then have a conversation with the class about what they just saw on that video, to get the class to learn along with the lecturer. And my wife and I were there, and we saw this, and we thought, that is really quite something. And so on the flight back to Hong Kong from this remote part of China, we said, what if we developed a program that actually created videotapes that are meant to be interrupted, videotapes that are given by superb teachers, but every 3 to 5 minutes it would stop, and it would be shown in the class, a live classroom, stop, and then the live teacher in the classroom would engage the students with a uh, with a conversation, a very energized conversation based on what they've just seen. And so when we came back, we said, what if we created a program like that and gave it away to the world? And by the time we landed in Hong Kong, we decided to do that. And so my wife, Elizabeth Murray, and I are co founders of the MIT Blossoms program. Blossoms, Blended Learning Open Source Science and Math Studies. And I believe we were the first major uh, people to, to first major program to create at the end that I think we created 80 or so Blossoms lessons. They're now all on YouTube, and give them away to the world. So you have superlative teachers, and these teachers are to be shown in classrooms around the world, high school classes around the world, and undergraduate classes in colleges too. And every few minutes it stops, and the in-class live teacher would engage the class in what they've just seen. And we're very proud of Blossoms. It's now on YouTube permanently, and Blossoms is used worldwide quite frequently every day. Um, Interesting. The most popular Blossoms lesson is on the physics of sailing. You know, you sailing a sailboat, and it's kind of counterintuitive. How can the sailboat move against the wind speed? And so the physics of sailing is one of the 80 Blossoms lessons that are available for free, and it's the most popular one. But we have them in all kinds of topics, and I suggest you might want to become familiar with them because they're on the web for free, YouTube, MIT Blossoms, and they're available no charge.
Professor, I am Shamim Al Jahidi from Bangladesh. I have one question. How will AI impact the new generation in the future?
How will AI affect the new generation in the future? Is that the question? Artificial intelligence?
Yes. Yes.
Your guess is as good as mine. Uh, AI to me is a mixed blessing. AI appropriately programmed and implemented can do some remarkable things, but it can also be abused. Uh, Students can use AI to do their homework, and they submit their homework saying that they wrote the homework, and really it was an AI algorithm that wrote the homework. So AI is both a blessing and a curse. So we have to figure out how to manage the bad parts of AI and take advantage of the good parts. And that's a work in progress for all of us. Any other questions?
No, Professor, thank you so much for enlightening us with your words. It really feels like blessing, and yeah, that's all the thing that we had to say from our corner. Thank you so much, Professor.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be invited to do this. And if anyone wants to contact me by email, you can see look up my name at MIT, and you can send me an email. So thank you so much. Bye
Hello,
bye.
Professor. Hello, Professor. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
This is Mihir Lal Saha, a faculty of Dhaka University. Today I joined with you. It was a nice deliberation, but I am a man of botany, not physics. But I do understand very important things that you share with us, especially our students of Bangladesh. Highly enlightened by your nice deliberation.
Well,
So
thank you.
I am giving my thanks from my country as well as my university, Dhaka. Hope to see you again.
Thank you. Hope to see you again too. Bye bye now for now. Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye.